The hell is that? What the fuck? Is it coming from under the bed? Hey guys, Paul here from Military History Gear Review, and today we are going to be checking out an old Soviet classic. This is the workhorse of two world wars, the Mosin Nagant. So be sure to stick around. I decided I'm going to celebrate Christmas a little bit early. And I got myself a Christmas present. Really, no facet of this is Christmassy. Yes, that's it. My wife is thrilled that she did not buy this, because rest assured, I don't know any wife that is totally on board with impulse gun purchases. Because we are going to be doing an unboxing of a Mosin Nagant 9130 rifle. All right, so as you can see, our old pal the Mosin has come in this large, nondescript cardboard box that looks like it is soaked through with Cosmoline. Let's see the accessories. First, we have a good old Soviet kind of fake leather pouch for your 7.62. You have a grease-covered, absolutely covered in Cosmoline, solvent holder. You have this, which I believe to be, yes, also covered in Cosmoline, cleaning kit for 2 bore snakes, couldn't even tell you what this is. But rest assured, they are greasy. Okay. Oh, and we got one last treat. Okay, before we take a look at the weapon itself. Yes, a giant screwdriver bayonet. Also covered in grease. All right, let's take a look at the rifle itself. Let's set her down. So to give you guys a little personal history about me and the Mosin was actually the first rifle I ever bought. I bought it in college for, I think, $100. This was back when you get a Mosin just dirt cheap. The ammo would cost you more than the rifle. But I loved it. I loved shooting it. I would go out with my friends all the time to one of my state's free ranges, even in like the dead of winter, and we would just knock back targets and just have a blast. So when I decided I needed to get a rifle to hunt with, of course, logically, I'm going to go with something that I'm already proficient with, already knowledgeable of, and if I'm going to drop a couple $100 on a rifle, I want it to have a personal connection for me. So let's look at some of the features of this. This is a 9130 Mosin Nagant. You can see it has a hex receiver, and we know that it was made in 1935, I believe. You can see it has a significant amount of Cosmoline grease. You can even maybe see it on my hands. But yeah, this thing is completely covered in it. But I went with the slightly greasier one because I think when I get this grease off, this stock is gonna look absolutely gorgeous, right? You can see the bluing, or you can see the dark wood finish that they used. You know, I think before the war, the Soviets really were using better quality materials. They just weren't in that wartime production mode they did. but we are going to try to field strip this thing down and start cleaning it. All right, so we've got this thing cleaned up, the cosmoline is knocked off, and I was able to take this thing out hunting in its original battle configuration. Literally zeroed it, checked the zero on a Friday, was out sitting in a blind on Saturday. So, what are my thoughts on the Mosin as a hunting rifle? Well, let's start here. First, this is a heavy rifle. Clocking in at almost 8 pounds, this thing is kind of a pain to lug around. Now that's a trade-off, right? You have extreme durability. I mean, this was made in 1935, right? So it actually is older than my grandfather. And almost certainly saw action in the Second World War, and was probably, I suspect, covered in cosmoline and stuck into storage from that point forward. So the fact that I could pull this thing out, knock it off, the battle sight zero was spot on. I was still putting rounds in the target at 100 meters, even late in the evening when we finally got there and had set up our zero. However, I also had some concerns with the rifle's safety. So for those of you that know the Mosin, you know that the safety is actually right here on the bolt, and you pull the bolt spring back and you give it a little rotation and it locks into place. But it requires quite a bit of effort to lock in. Now, we only had buck tags out where I was hunting, so when we had a shot at a doe, I wasn't even going to take it. But that said, we did in fact have 3 doe come out in the woods about 60 yards in front of us, and I would have had a beautiful shot on them, but I probably only had 3 seconds to take the shot, right? Could I have in 3 seconds popped this thing off a safe, lined up a shot and taken it? Would have been tight, right? In contrast, my brother's Remington 700, right, has the safety right here. All he had to do was flip it up with his thumb and he'd have been in action. Of course, you also have the option of setting up in a blind with the safety off, but that's probably not a great call. Still, most deer hunting isn't going to give you these tiny windows to shoot deer. So it's up to you on whether you think this safety issue is a huge problem or not. The 7.62 by 54R round, it can reach out as far as you really would want to go. That thing has a huge velocity and is lethal at insane distances. You can see when the Nagant was developed, it was developed to have a round that was going to be killing people at 2,000 meters, right? You set the sight at 2,000 and literally you know that you are going to be lining the rifle up like this with your target, which is sort of insane, right? So, we know that we can reach out and touch a deer about as far as we can see it and as far as we're willing to shoot it. Again, your biggest other constraint is going to be accuracy, right? These are older rifles, right? The barrels are in varying conditions, and they're just not going to be as accurate as modern, like a Remington 700, right? That said, they're not as cool. And at least to me, there is a cool nostalgia historical factor to this. So the Mosin Nagant was developed originally in the late 1800s, which is sort of incredible. It was the generation of rifles, right, where European armies were instituting smokeless powder cartridges and repeating rifles, right? And Russia was slow to adopt both of these technologies, but because they spent so much time in the development process, they really designed a rifle that was very effective, cheap to manufacture, and extremely resilient, right? It first saw action in the Russo-Japanese War in the 1890s, right? And this served the Russian military in World War I, the Russian Civil War, the Finnish-Russian War. On both sides, actually. The Finns also made Mosin Nagants, though much better quality than Russia. It served in World War II, right? And then finally, it left the Russians active service, right? It wasn't a primary arm going, for long after World War II. I think in the 50s they rolled out the SKS and the AK shortly thereafter. But it remained in service in all sorts of other conflicts, right? Mosin variants were seen in the Chinese forces in Korea. They were seen in Vietnam by the Viet Cong. They showed up in Afghanistan in the Soviet War and in the American War in Afghanistan and in Iraq, right? So why are these rifles everywhere? Well, one of the answers is, of course, the fact that the Soviets were hoarders. And the Soviets never wanted a repeat of World War II, where they didn't have enough arms and ammunition to equip their troops to fight the invading Germans. And so, even when material was rotated out of service, right, it would just get mothballed, and the Soviets would just stockpile it as a contingency. And that's what they did with these Mosin Nagants. Now, the Soviets also would support a lot of pro-Soviet governments, national independence movements, anything that would align with their geopolitical interests. And so that meant that they would take frequently these surplus weapons, the same thing the United States did, take surplus weapons and distribute them to those movements. Which meant that, of course, Mosins would end up in the hands of all sorts of disparate national independence movements and fledgling communist or pseudo-communist governments. It also helped that the round this uses, the 7.62 by 54 rimmed cartridge, is an absolutely pervasive round in the country, right? It's in the world. It's used obviously in the Mosin. It's also used in the PKM machine gun, the Dragunov, and so it was manufactured en masse and just distributed so widely. Again, you have to think about how much machine gun ammo, PKM machine gun ammo, is out there floating around in the world. Just a tremendous, tremendous volume. And so, as a function of that, there's always rounds. There's always ammo for Mosins. And because they're a big, long battle rifle, right, they can reach out and touch someone, even with iron sights, at around 300 or more meters, right? That's actually an excellent level of accuracy. So with this very, very durable rifle that just never quits, and plentiful ammo all over the world, this has become a pretty iconic battle rifle, right? I believe there's even photos of some marksmen in militia using this in the conflict in Ukraine. And again, just a testament to just what a workhorse this rifle is. That said, ultimately, would I take this out of the box hunting again? No. Next time I hunt with this, I'm going to do the work. I'm going to try to get it into a scout conversion and accurize it a little bit. Right, the trigger pull is very long and very heavy. The iron sights are fine, but they get pretty tough to see as during dusk and dawn, which of course are peak times for deer hunting. So I'd much rather have an optic that I can see more clearly in low light conditions. Of course, if I can get a new stock and lighten it, that wouldn't be the end of the world either. That said, I love this rifle, purely for emotional and historical reasons. I love the idea of taking a 70-year-old piece of technology that is still every ounce as operable as the day it was issued, and still adding to its legacy, right, which I think is awesome. So that is all I had for you guys. Let me know in the comments, have you guys used the Mosin? Have you accurized it? If so, how? Do you have any recommendations on the Scout Scope mount or anything like that? Really curious to know. And of course, be sure to like the video. Please subscribe to the channel. It really makes a difference for me. And of course, until next time, I'll see you guys on the trail.